Welcome to episode 8 of the Dialed and Driven Hockey Mentality Podcast. Chris Palmer, mental performance coach, Jeff Lerg, goalie mentors. Every single time we put out one of these, we're trying to give you something actionable to use in your life. And today we're going to talk about a really cool subject. And that subject is the things we do in our heads before games, the pregame rituals and the pregame superstitions. And I smile because we all know that there's people who do these things. So for us today, we're going to talk about this, and I want you to know, I personally think, and I believe Jeff, you feel the same, it's fantastic to have pregame rituals. Because in the end, it's all part of taking it from being this guy who's on the bus or driving a car to being the guy who gets the warm-up, the guy who's ready to go, the guy who's on the ice, the guy who's ready to give everything he has on the ice. So tell us anything about pregame rituals and superstitions.
Tell us anything. I can tell you a lot. As a goalie, I became kind of entertainment for fans to watch at times because I was always kind of trying to keep myself busy throughout the course of the game. So I know for fans, they've seen me do certain routines before a penalty kill or at the start of the period. I always kind of just made up a new routine, and I think at some point I used that to kind of keep my mind busy. But as a goalie, goalies are often viewed upon as being kind of quirky or weird, and sometimes we bring it on ourselves. I know I probably fit that mold that, I had a certain routine that I established for myself to bring success, but also some of it was superstitious and just in terms of just trying to get my mind wrapped around whatever it takes to do to win this game, I'm going to do. And if that's wearing the same outfit that's been undefeated this year, then I'm going to wear it. So little things like that, but they're all for the sake of just amping myself up to reach my fullest potential that night, or at least giving my mind the thought that I've done everything I can to go out and win.
Let's talk about the psychology side of this. We all know that if you just go out of your car and you just go right to the game, you're not going to be ready. It's just impossible. There's a process. You have to decide what's going on. You got to get your head ready. And nothing really works better than having a plan, not just arbitrarily doing this. So having a plan is great, but sometimes the plans don't go well. Let's use, for example, Braden Holtby. Fantastic, fantastic guy. One of the best goalies ever. Holtby had this amazing thing where like an hour 52 before a game, I'm not kidding you, like an hour 52, this thing happened. At an hour 18, this is supposed to happen. At an hour 6, this is supposed to happen. At 52 minutes before, this is supposed to happen. Just think about that. Think about how comfortable that must be for him to know, hey, this is what I'm doing the 2 hours before a game. Or just think about how uncomfortable that is when you hit the 152 mark and for whatever reason, this thing you're trying to do isn't working, or you can't get access, or the lights are out. Think about Sidney Crosby. Sidney Crosby reportedly has a thing where he will not go by the visitor locker room. Won't do it when he comes into a building. He'll go as far around as he has to. But what if there's no other path? What if he's stuck? So it's great as a thing that gets you ready, but the danger is if you're in a situation where you're trying to get yourself ready and you have this ritual, and sometimes it's a superstition, you feel like you can't win without it, that hyper-rigidity might be an issue. So let me ask you, Jeff, as you were doing things, is there one ritual that you had that you think is just super, super, super strong, something you kept all the way along for you?
I think the overall state of it was to get mentally, physically, and emotionally amped up. And so there was a physical element, whether it be certain routines at a pregame skate or stretch, and then obviously a pregame nap or rest, eyes shut in a quiet zone to kind of pregame visualize myself. So the visualization became a part of it. And then it became the emotional amp up of certain music and certain kind of more visualization to really put some meaning to each game. And all those things at the core were meant to get physically, mentally, and emotionally amped up to do everything I could to be successful that night. I will say the visualization was always something, but that was done in my own time, and no one knows the exact routines I went through. That was all just to myself. And we're going to go through a handful of examples with our special guest. She'll give us some details on many things that I had to do to believe I was going to win. But at its core, it was all just to get my mind wrapped around it. I do want to share one of the things in hockey players, there's a superstitious element. You watch the NHL warm-ups, there's people who always have to be on the ice last. Listening to the recent Four Nations tournament and listening to John Cooper talk about Team Canada, and he talked about at the start of the warm-up no one knew where to go because with their own teams, with their current teams, they all had a certain space on the ice that they always went to. And then they had kind of an all-star team of people. No one knew what their routine was. So hockey in general does have that. And I think being around the hockey culture, you start to thrive off that or see that and kind of develop your own routines. Like I had a buddy, he became a real close friend of mine, but in junior hockey, we were competitors. And he ended up telling me one day, because we were talking about my superstitions, that one game he had McDonald's before he got a hat trick. So the next game, or for a period of time, he went to that same McDonald's before a bus trip, would put the McDonald's in his hockey bag, let it sit on the bus, get there after a 2 or 3 hour road trip, get to the rink and eat McDonald's at that rink. Like that's how crazy some of the stuff that people have done to get themselves in a good mental state. And I have my own examples of some of that. I don't think I went that far, at least in my view. But yeah, there's many things that it can affect the way that your mind is preparing for the game.
I mean, you're right. And it's in every sport. You know, I came from the crazy running background, running 75, 90 miles a week in college. And I can tell you, even in our groups, we had the same kinds of things. Like, if I was sick, I ran all the time. I mean, unless I was hospitalized, which was one time, I ran. I ran with bronchitis. I ran with pneumonia. It didn't matter because I always felt like if I didn't get a run in, man, I was behind. Just think how ridiculous that is. If you missed one 4-mile morning run, which, you know, look at 4 miles compared to 90 miles in a week. And how many weeks of 90 miles? What's 4 miles? It's a warm-up run. It's nothing. But it would eat at me. And I didn't like getting up for these morning runs, but I did it. And I did it because I really felt like if I didn't do that one thing, even if I was sick, it'd be a problem. And the problem is it can become a real problem, though. It really can be paralyzing. And I knew a guy who I ran with who he didn't get a run in one time because he was really badly sick. He was out for 2 days. And for the whole rest of the season, he got stuck on this. Well, you know, I didn't have those 2 days. I mean, you could see, like, at some point, it could be really paralyzing. You drive yourself nuts. And I think that's why they call it superstition versus science. It's this thing that you kind of think is true. But I think now is a perfect time to bring in our guest who's going to shed some light in a much happier way and really a much more interesting way than we've been able to do it. Let's bring in our guest and talk some more about the real life Jeff Lerg that maybe nobody's seen.
So before we get in the depths of my superstitions, I want to bring on someone who's been around for 14 years of marriage, 3 years of dating prior to that. I knew she was a keeper, whatever it was, 5, we'll say. It's been a long time. I will say that Fife, my wife, she was meant to be a hockey wife because she doesn't even go by her real first name. She has a nickname. So one of the many reasons I married her was that. But also, the first year I dated her, we won the national championship at Michigan State. So me being a very superstitious goalie, I knew she was the one for me. All joking aside, Fife, pop quiz, you know me better than anyone. We know that a whole game day routine was like from the night before all the way through when I left for the rink, and then there was a lot more that took place after that. But pop quiz, easy one. When we were in a slump, what pregame meal did you have to make me?
Lasagna, veggie lasagna, very specifically every single time. And 99% of the time, it got us out.
Exactly. Whenever it was do or die, game 7, it was veggie lasagna.
The only time the veggie lasagna lost was game 7, triple overtime, but I consider it still a win because it was almost 2 games, so.
Yeah, it was 0-0, so I had a shutout.
Yeah. A really important thing to note in that, too, is when we first started dating, I was really your first serious girlfriend. And your dad looked at you and said, first bad goal, she's out. And luckily, you won the national championship, so I got to stay forever.
You stayed, yeah.
Yeah.
He was joking, but also, we had. He knew I was a pretty serious, driven athlete, and it was more of a joke. But obviously, I found a comfort level, even with her coming to Michigan State first year dating. I had to be like, hey, you're not coming toward my room during a pregame nap. Like, take a hike. Let me get focused. But we had many things evolved over time. Pregame meal is one of them. Especially we moved to Europe, and all of a sudden, I played for a long time after college, 10 years. So the longer I kept playing, things evolved, and I probably added more superstitions. Like if we were going on an away game the next night in France, what was the pregame? The night before meal, away game.
Away game was always steak and salad and sweet potato.
Wow.
And you put a lot of cinnamon on the sweet potato.
This is funny. We could have a lot of trips, but that's
And
correct.
then the home game was salmon and broccoli and quinoa. Man, I got sick of that meal. There was a lot of home games in there.
She did all the grocery shopping, so that's why she knows. But yeah, so
I never touched the pregame meal. That was all you, every time. Lemon chicken and always pasta before, but I didn't touch that.
Beautiful.
That was you, yeah.
So the meals are one, like the night before, we'd always have a show that I always watched. For me, my preparation, though, started in the morning of the game day, so I'd always have the same breakfast, kind of same routine when I got to the rink. Pre-game skate, I always finished with the same drills, always had to make a good glove save to finish. And I did a lot of these things to kind of get myself amped up. Like, that was the point of it. It was to just really keep making myself, I'm going to do my best and I'm going to play 10 out of 10. You know, we're going to find a way to win. It was all kind of this amp up approach. And so she got to see that along the way. And then I'd take my nap. After the nap, what usually took place, or what always took place, I should say, wake up, shower
immediately. But there was so much pressure on me not to make a noise during pregame nap. Like, if anyone came and knocked on the door, I'm like, shh, you have to be quiet. I was very intense not to let anything disturb you on anything. So you would wake up immediately to the shower. I didn't even know if I could look at you before you went to the shower. And then
snack after.
But you came out, you had your snack, your peanut butter and honey sandwich, and you went right to the table and you went right to your computer, opened it where you had your iPod Touch. Your mom tried to buy you a new one and you wouldn't even use it because you were too superstitious to use a new iPod.
That's true.
That shows our age too.
And I kept the same playlist, some of it from junior days. In 2004, I always had to start out with the one song I always used in juniors before I got on a red hot streak. So that always started it. Yeah.
It was so funny because it was always the same 3 songs in a row, but the third song didn't get the whole song. You would have to run to the computer if you weren't there and hit the pause button so you didn't hear a second more of that song.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I could go on for 3 hours on every little nuance of it, and that is correct. And then I'd get in the car, I'd have a whole nother playlist for the car. But then once I got to the rink, it was there was no music, no headphones. It was just straight beast mode. I don't care who I'm playing against, I'm going to win. And all this was more just I had to become kind of this mentally twisted, highly focused, I don't care what happened in the past. I'm going to do everything I can to win. And all of this was just basically amping me up. If you watch me play in a warm-up of a professional game, I was a spaz out there. I was just flying 1,000 miles an hour. People used to take videos of me in warm-ups because they could just see how many different routines I got. Even in the warm-ups, it was always finishing with a certain type of save, and then I could get off the ice. Many players have that, but that was kind of how I operated.
Well, and Toledo was actually the best because they knew even how crazy you were with you hanging on the goalpost before every time you would do a penalty kill. Was it power play too?
Whenever we were on penalty kill, I had a whole routine. If we were on a penalty kill, I had a whole routine.
So there was a Batman game in Toledo, and you and everyone in the crowd was prepared for you when you went on the penalty kill, so they could catch you flying backwards like Batman on there. So we'll have to find that picture and put that up.
They made a bobblehead of it.
Yeah.
But actually, one of the true facts, though, whether it was what I was wearing to the game or it just happened to be by circumstance, the year at Michigan State we won a national championship, your parents got me a Christmas gift, and it was a new dress shirt and tie. And that tie went undefeated the rest of the year. So once the NCAA tournament started, it was same outfit, 4 straight games, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it was wild. It was 10-0. I wore it, and I was we won. So then I think at some point I wore it again, and I kind of realized, this shirt and tie is a good combo.
My dad was also undefeated that year, and so once you were going to St. Louis, you were he's got to come because he's undefeated. There's no way he cannot be there.
Yeah,
so.
I was going to buy his ticket. But the other thing I want to bring up, though, is that I kind of rubbed off on you in terms of what it took to get a win.
Right.
You started to get some interesting little habits.
Yeah, if a certain pair of underwear was working, I had to stick with it, or I had my rotation of 2 or 3 different pairs. And
what about pregame getting to
Well,
Same bar.
yeah, we had to go to the same place. Like when we were in Toledo, the colors were blue, so we had to take a blue shot before the game, make sure that we stuck with everything. I don't even know if you realized with my speech before the game, like we had a little handshake.
Yeah, she'd give me a little like pregame pep talk.
And say, let's do it.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'll spare the details. But like I had to make sure I said certain things to you. And if I forgot anything, I was like, oh no, this is going to be a bad game.
Well, I will say I had to learn kind of the filtering mechanism on really where I would stress on. But all that stuff just kind of made me feel good, kind of got me in a zone, you know. Then I would always shut the doors on the way out because I was being a goalie. I was like, I'm going to shut the door tonight. So I like would shut the doors. I played too long. That's why there were so many games, 72 games in a year. So like something might have worked one day and I would filter through, but generally speaking, when you were around, that was the routine. And then, of course, there's many road games where I was by myself, and not every single detail like we just discussed took place, but I obviously developed a whole nother sense of routine. I think that I probably rubbed off on you, then you became kind of this crazy goalie wife who probably had to sit in the same seat. And
that's exactly what I was just going to say next. Actually, I got really lucky with girls that were on my team that understood that like we needed to sit in a certain order. I needed their legs at all times so I could grab on and hold on anytime it crossed the blue line. And if the first period was bad, we were switching that order up. I was not sitting by Sally anymore because she was clearly bad luck. So I had to get her out of there. And then your mom actually rubbed off on me too, because she would always pick a certain bathroom that she had to go in between periods. So then that rubbed off on me as well, where I would wait in line to get that certain one. So
yeah, we want to bring these stories to light just between she and I, obviously many years together. As we know, not only athletes have routines and superstitions, but many times it comes off into extended family. And I know, especially during playoff time of the youth season that's taking place now, I'm sure there's some parents that are wearing their lucky shirt or their lucky hat or something to the rink that they know brought the team some success. So thanks, Fife, for coming on. Obviously, Chris and I will keep breaking down all these stories. So great job. Thanks for shedding some light on my craziness.
Thank you.
Let me ask you, can you think of a specific time for you when you had this rigidity, and you had a lot of rigidity that you set up, and it's really good. But in all of that, did you have a time that you had something set up and you didn't get what you needed? You didn't get the routine that you were used to. And then you played poorly because you were worried because you didn't get your pregame routine.
Yeah, I did. Freshman year of college, is kind of getting to a high-level, nationally televised game. I was at Michigan State. We were going to Notre Dame, and we're close enough to make a day trip, so we'd always play a home and home. We'd leave the same day, and then the next night they'd come to us. And I remember freshman year, we were on the way to Notre Dame, and there was a huge accident, long backup traffic jam, and you know, the normal routine of getting there a couple hours before the game and getting off the bus and going through the whole stretch was completely thrown out the window. I was like, oh boy, we're not moving. What time is it? What time is it? And then I was like, okay, let's go through the visualization now. Let's go through, okay, I usually listen to that song. Now I got to do it here. So everything was thrown off. I was trying to get as much done as I could while sitting stuck in traffic on this bus. And we got to the rink, and it was literally like, get off the bus, put your gear on, and go out like you're back in squirts and peewees, like half hour before a game. And it was a nationally televised game. Before you know it, we're down 3-0 in the first period. And it was just like, you know, was it because of that? It was a whole mental twist on myself that, you know.
It's so good because on one hand, we tell people to be prepared, right? You want to be prepared. Parents, if you're trying to help your kids, if you give a crap at every kind of high level, being prepared is the thing. And whether it's a routine you have, whether it's a superstition, whatever it is, it's all part of preparation. It's all part of wanting to do well. But in the end, life happens, man. Life just happens, and it can kick your ass. And sometimes you're sick. Sometimes you get a flat tire. Sometimes you get diarrhea, whatever. I mean, just stuff happens. Sometimes a certain food won't be available. And one big giant takeaway here is that rituals are fantastic, but even for you at your level, you're a perfect example of a guy who's super, super disciplined. Everybody knows you knows that. And whether it's, high pressure winning at national championship, your pro career, you succeeded massively. But it's so awesome that even you in your situation had a relative failure because this structure you created became so important to you that structure actually harmed you when you couldn't complete it. And it's awesome. And you talked about adapting past that, though. Like after that point, you actually learned some things about how to look at these pregame things. And some of them were things that were almost superstitious, but you put less weight on their absolute importance as time went on. Is that right?
Yeah, and I had the benefit of being able to play for a longer period of time. At the higher competitive levels, I consider junior hockey your first step into really the higher competitive level. So 2 years of junior hockey, 4 years of college hockey, then 10 years in the minors, riding buses and not having a perfect travel day to be prepared for a game. So I had to learn that just through failure. I had to learn, okay, what really matters? And it forced me to go back and really establish what was important. And secondly, the other stuff just made me feel good, made me feel like I could control what I could control. As we know, the goaltending position in hockey is so uncontrollable. I just wanted to control as many elements of the day as possible. And that's where my kind of staying busy, routine-oriented day came from.
So on this mental performance side, there's this thing in psychology that really your thoughts are everything. It's all over all these different therapies, and it makes so much sense. And these rituals are really about creating these thoughts. But I'd love to hammer home this idea that over the course of a great career, these things can be really, really helpful, but seeing them for what they are is so important. And that's their money in the bank, their preparation. And not everything, just like a game, not everything's going to go the way you want. There's lucky bounces. There's things that don't work. There's unlucky bounces. It's a really awesome kind of framework, and I love that we're getting to this real stuff. I'd love to talk more about your transition from going from being this guy who has this great rigidity, this great plan, these great superstitions, these great pre-game rituals, to one day it doesn't work. And what do? You did this thing, you didn't get what you needed, you fell apart, you felt really reliant on the structure, and all of a sudden it fell apart. But there was a very specific time when you decided, well, we've got to do something different. I can't be so reliant on this structure for my success because my success comes from things outside of this structure. Can you tell us about that? Because there's a big lesson in that.
Just like everything in life, you learn through failure and through experiences. And for me, I mentioned previously the story of my freshman year in college, and I was putting so much stress on just, I got to win this game because I want to play again. I'm just starting to get some minutes, and I really put my energy just toward anything I can do. Eventually, I learned the routine of controlling really what matters. And for me, it all came down at its core. I knew that I did all the work during my practices, games, off season, and I knew my visualization and my past successes were kind of a driving force in making me believe in myself. So all these teaching points came to light later in my career. Proud of this story. It ended up being the only minutes I ever played in the American Hockey League. Previously, I was set up to go play there. We talked about how I tore both my ACLs back to back, and it was a goal that I was chasing as a professional, is to just find my way up to that next level through injuries and just through trying to work my way up. Being the smallest goalie, I wasn't getting that opportunity. Well, around 28, 29 years old, I was playing for that Toledo Walleye team. We had a game on a Thursday night, I think, in Indianapolis. A team that was in our division. After the game, coach came up to me and said, "Hey, Lergy, you got called up to San Diego. You leave tomorrow at 6 a.m. Flight leaves. They play tomorrow night in Bakersfield, California." So the rest of the team went back on the bus. They got me a hotel. I stayed, probably slept 2 or 3 hours that night because I just played a game. I had a good game, too. Got a shutout. So I had a good game. Didn't sleep at all, because you're kind of wired after the game. Then you're up early to the airport and carrying your bags and getting everything that you need. So took a flight from Indy down to Houston, Texas, all the way across to Bakersfield, California, and went to the rink, dropped my stuff off, introduced myself to the coach. He's never really heard of me, or we didn't have any personal relationship. Introduced myself to the team, got back to the hotel. And I remember, couldn't sleep. I was so tired, but it was one of those things I couldn't sleep. It was just get as much as I could, get a meal, try to lay down, and then get to the rink. And I'm trying to get myself prepared for an American Hockey League game, 9,000 people in the stands against some high caliber people who end up playing in the NHL for a while. So I'm going through my routine, but it was all about just getting a good warm up, go through my visualization, get the racquetball hand-eye going, kind of reaffirming to myself, hey, I've done all the work. I've established many success stories along the way. I always had a really hard warm-up. I'd go in a warm-up of a pro game and just be sweating. Been a goalie long enough to know anything's possible. It might be my moment, it may not be, but be prepared regardless. And then about midway through the game, it's 5-1, we're losing. The coach looked at me and said, hey, next whistle, you're going in. And the thought in my head was, after all these years of doing everything to a T, this is my moment to get my American Hockey League minutes. I'd been waiting for that opportunity for probably 6-7 years, and I'd been called up to certain American League teams and sat on the bench probably for 15 games. Never had gotten it. I had perfect days of preparation for it. Never had gotten it. And then I'm thinking to myself, this is my time. No sleep, no nap, barely any food, just go out and play. And I ran back to the locker room, had to go do another puff of my inhaler because my bad asthma, because I'm going in, I got to amp up. And then went in, 13 shots, 13 saves, no goals against. Our team clawed back to lose 5-4. So during my time, we ended up kind of coming back to make it close. But I was super proud of that moment because that ended up being the only time I ever got in the American Hockey League. And I look at that not as a disappointment, but more of a success story in that I did everything I possibly could. I controlled what I could. And even when all the adversity was thrown my way, my professional experience helped me establish what really mattered.
That's the proof, though. I mean, that's the proof right there. That's the arc of the human being, right? This is why sports is so amazing. This is why the movie Any Given Sunday exists, because when it comes down to it, you can't control everything. Life's out of control. Crazy things happen. You proved to yourself in that day. You came in and you became the hero. You wouldn't say that, but you were the hero that day. You came in and made stuff happen, and you made stuff happen with nothing. Crap sleep, crap nutrition, no nap, nothing. Flying across the country. It was terrible. Every bad thing happened and it didn't matter. Like one of the things I love doing when I train guys, I try to help them see that things aren't going to be exactly the way they want them to be. We'll talk about going a certain direction, and some of these physical challenge things we'll do, I'll keep adding on. Well, hey, games are unpredictable. We're going to do this now, we're going to do that. And it puts them in this kind of off-balance situation, but they always realize that in the end, if they can just do their job and bust their ass, there's always more in the tank. There's always performance available. And you prove that. But what's really interesting is, we hear your wife talking about these ultra rigid things with meals and even how you dressed and, underwear and ties or whatever. All these things are great. And I really think the end thing here, the take home for parents, for people who are doing this themselves, for guys in the pros, guys going into juniors, jumping these different levels, it's fantastic to have a pair of shoes you always wear, or a tie, or a meal, or a Cliff Bar, or a prayer, or whatever thing. It's great to have those. But those things should be looked at as money in the bank. Any of them you can do, they just help more. They're not necessary. They're not life and death necessary. You prove that. In the end, rituals can make us feel comfortable. They can make us feel confident. But in the end, the real confidence comes from busting your ass in practice and doing the things that allow you to be great and executing what you know, executing what you know, executing what you know. That's the takeaway. So enjoy the rituals. Dress in your favorite things. Sit in your favorite place. But in the end, you're a human being. Bad things are going to happen. You're going to fall apart. Keep busting your ass. That's the lesson. Do you want to take us out, Jeff?
Excellent summary, Chris. Something near and dear to my heart, these superstitions and rituals. And we appreciate you guys listening again. As a reminder, we're at dialedandriven@gmail and on social. We'd love to hear any feedback or comments, or if you're looking to work with us on the mental performance side or goaltending training, we'll be there for you. And any reviews and likes and follows are appreciated. We look forward to chatting again next week. Keep staying dialed.